Hello and welcome to another episode of History of Westeros podcast, a podcast dedicated to George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire book series, as well as HBO's Game of Thrones. Today's episode is a live Q&A based on the Song of Ice and Fire book series. So some questions might relate slightly to the TV show, but overall we're going to try to focus on A Song of Ice and Fire proper. That was our video playing through, because we had it open as well. Anyways, so there will be a few mild The Winds of Winter spoilers in this video based on the released sample chapters. We're going to warn everyone if we're about to say something along those lines, though. So.
That's right. We're pretty excited to do this. It's our first live A Song of Ice and Fire Q&A. We've done Game of Thrones Q&As at the end of the TV season. So it's sort of territory we've been in before, but this is the first time we've done it from the books, which we both love more than the show. Mm-hmm. So that's a little bit of extra fun. We do enjoy the show, but the books are certainly what got us into this whole thing. And it's what we have more fun talking about. There's more to talk about. And you guys have given us a lot of great questions to build up on this.
So if you're listening to this and you're wondering, why did I miss this live event? You need to add us on Google Plus by searching Westeros History /AA podcast, and you'll receive invites to these events then. And to ask questions, you need to click on the Q&A written on the top right of the Google Plus event page. Please don't ask them on the video itself, not because it's a real problem for us or anything, but because we might miss them during the video itself, and we don't want to miss your excellent questions.
We surely don't. And another cool thing about the reason why it's important to ask the question through the actual Google Plus app is because it puts them on the screen for us. We can click on them, and then it displays them on the screen, and even timestamps when we've clicked on it so that you can later check the video, look at the questions, click on a question, and see directly where we've answered that question rather than having to search through the whole video for it. So that's pretty cool. And of course, if you ask the question manually, there's no way for it to get involved in that system. So that is our spiel on why you should use the Google Plus app for this. Now, let's get going, though. This episode, of course, the origin of this is it is one of our Patreon milestones that we hit a little while back, and we're very excited to have gotten to that milestone. We want to thank the people that helped us to get to this point and people that will be helping us in the future as well. Thanks also to Joshua Hayes Cutter, known as Joshua the Raw, the History of Westeros First Sword, one of those Patreon supporters in particular. So we don't have a lot more things to say at the beginning. I think we'll just go ahead and start getting into these questions. But there is one other thing I wanted to talk about. You may have noticed a little bit of difference in our background there.
Yeah, it's very exciting. What the deal is with this map right here, if you're listening on audio, well, you got to go to our YouTube page to see the picture, or go to our Facebook page where I've shared a picture of it. I do a Fan Artist Friday, so I shared a picture once we got it up. It's well worth the look. This is created by Michael Klarfeld, also known as Klaradox. You can find a link to his website and other work in the description for this video, on our Facebook page, etc. And so if anyone wants to pick up a copy of their own, you can send us an email about it at westeroshistory@gmail.com.
Right on.
The exciting thing is that Michael is working on an Essos map. And if anyone is a fan of A Song of Ice and Fire maps, they'll know that there just aren't very many Essos maps. There really aren't. And his Essos map is just insane. It's gorgeous, insane. It has illustrated historical scenes, obviously up our alley, along the left side, featuring like Rise of Valyria, Rhoynar migration, etc. Like about 11 of them along the side. And then along the top and bottom, there's going to be a pantheon, a variety of gods and goddesses of Essos.
It's going to be really cool. I haven't even seen it yet. Obviously, it's not done yet, but I'm
not done.
Looking at that and all those ideas.
So Aziz and I have been emailing him back and forth about this project, and we came up with a list of gods and goddesses separated into like viability for visual depiction and stuff like that for him. Because of this, I've been thinking a lot about Essos and religions and stuff like that.
Yeah, right on.
And so to move on to the next question, which is not in the Q&A, It's not one of the actual questions. Shame on you,
Jeff.
Yeah.
Well, so anyway, Jeff, this question is from Jeff Hartline, aka Brendan B. Fish. The question is, when you guys look in your crystal ball, which Jeff, of course, we have several crystal balls, so you need to be more specific, but we'll forgive you for that. What do you see for the future of the podcast? What topics, to include single episode and multi-episode podcasts, do you hope to cover eventually? Well, thanks for the question, Jeff. That is a really good question. And as she said, interested in covering Essos.
Yeah, I definitely just want to cover all of the incredibly fascinating cultures of Essos. I want to get into that. I also want to go back to our religion and magic series, which is a little bit of a difficult subject, but I definitely want to go back to it. Yeah,
it's cool. There's so many topics to do, and I think that there'll be more to do with that after we get into the Winds of Winter, because I think the Winds of Winter, we're going to see a lot more of the supernatural. We're going to see a lot, like the magic will be higher. It'll be at its high point, and there'll be more for us to cover. So it might make more sense maybe for us to wait and do more of the historical topics in the meantime, like she said.
Yeah, we definitely need to cover the Dance of the Dragons, though, in depth.
That's a big one,
the Rogue Prince and the Princess and the Queen. That's definitely going to happen, I think, before the Winds of Winter.
Yeah, and we've been starting to do house histories again, which is important. The first one isn't out yet, though I'm almost done with House Royce. We're going to be putting that one out in the next couple of weeks, and that'll be the start of coverage of a lot of these important but secondary houses. We're not going to cover the great houses necessarily, because I think those have gotten a lot of coverage already. But there's a lot of cool stuff to be said about House Royce, House Reed, House Dane, House...
I've already kind of done Hightower a little bit.
A little bit of Hightower. I was about to say that, and I realized the same thing. Yeah, and there's just so many other small ones like that. Manderley, perhaps. There's just a lot of important secondary houses that may become more important later, or are really interesting from a historical perspective, or both. So I hope that answers your question, Jeff. We also are planning on doing what's called a Zeus versus chapter, which is another Patreon milestone goal. And what that's going to be is me versus a chapter, right? What could be more obvious, right? No, what that means is, I'm going to defeat a bunch of pages. It's going to be a tough battle. No, I'm going to take chapters, sometimes randomly, sometimes voted on, and just break them down. I've read the book so many times that it's just a thing I can just fire away and talk about them. It should be a lot of fun. A little simpler. But it will be available to Patreon subscribers and donators only, because we need to generate a little bit more to make this a full-time living. And that is something we didn't want to do, but it's at this point it seems necessary, and I think it's going to be fun. And I think, given you will only need to put in $1 a month to get access to that, so I don't think it's exactly cost prohibitive. Anyway, let's move on to the next question. The question here is, I'm not sure if you think it's actually confirmed. I'm not sure if it's actually confirmed, but do you think Dunk was actually knighted by Sir Arlen? If not, how do you think this affects the story going forward? Thought I'd throw in a D&E theory since the books were released this week. And that question comes from Kieran O'Hagan. Yep, you wondering if I was going to pronounce your name right. I hope that was close enough. I actually looked it up. And so hopefully that was close.
And that was confirmed, so spake Martin, that that's a lie.
Yeah.
Dunk was not knighted.
He was not
though it's been suspected and implied in the books. We didn't grab the exact quote that makes it pretty clear, but the clues are there. But it has been confirmed.
Yeah, but I do think that it will come up again, because he's going to join the King's Guard, and I don't think the kind of guy he is, I don't think he'd feel right unless he was properly knighted. So I'm not sure if he's going to admit that he was never knighted, but he's going to be like, I'd like to, maybe I want to be re-knighted or something like that, just to make it official.
Something.
Yeah, because I think that would mean something to him. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yes. So that was our first actual Q&A question. Our next Q&A question is also to do with Dunk and Egg. If I'm actually able to locate it here. Here it is.
There we go. Cash Craig. So Knight of the Seven Kingdoms tells us that Dunk and Egg will go to the Free Cities and the Disputed Lands. Why and when? Yeah, that is new information that George wrote in the afterword.
The exact quote is that they'll go beyond the Narrow Sea to the Disputed Lands and the shining cities of Essos.
So one thing we can do to look for clues is to look at the titles of the upcoming books, which George has released. Of course, those are subject to change, but one of them is called The Sellsword. And at the time, we imagined we probably weren't thinking Essos as a possibility.
We were thinking maybe Bittersteel and Golden Company were possible, but it was just suspected.
Right.
Now it's like almost definite.
Yeah, now we're
I'd
like
say.
very confident. So that's really exciting. The opportunity to potentially see Bittersteel on screen. Excuse me while I wipe away the drool. So I am very excited about that possibility. And as far as what else we'll see there, besides this question wasn't just about Bittersteel. What else will we see? And of course, he's asking, why will they go there? Why will they go there?
I've seen some interesting theories on this. I've seen someone that thinks that it'll be some sort of rift between Egg and Dunk.
Oh.
I don't myself think that, but I think it's an interesting idea. I think that they'll be like undercover, you know. But is Egg going to go there with him to be a sellsword? I don't know.
Yeah, I really, that's a tough question. I think those are valid possibilities, but wow, like it's almost like trying to figure out what George has in mind for something that's just got a lot of possibilities, and that's difficult to narrow down. But I think there's a lot of potential because, I mean, Tyrosh is right next to the disputed lands. Tyrosh is where the Blackfires kind of had a bit of a home base. We hear about Bloodraven has his eye fixed on Tyrosh because he knows that's where the threat is hosting. And it could be, like you say, it could be some sort of a rift, or it could be like maybe they're going there as like a sort of spying mission, you know, like they're pretty incognito. They're just two guys, like they don't have any connection to the throne. Bittersteel's not going to recognize Egg. Well, he might be older by then.
If I'm sending someone to Essos, Dunk is not the person I would want to send. He's not exactly a wordsmith or a linguist.
That's true. But if this comes a bit later on, then Egg might be like a teenager. He might be a lot more well-spoken, more presentable. He won't be just a squire necessarily. I mean, he'll still be a squire, but he won't be just a squire.
Yeah.
And you wonder if he's ever going to stop shaving his head. I'm guessing no. I'm guessing he's going to keep doing that until till much later. Maybe once Arian dies. I'm
personally hoping we see Shira Seastar.
Oh yeah.
And all this. I mean,
I think that's likely.
Too. I don't know about this one exactly, but maybe this is more likely than others.
It seems pretty likely. I agree with that. I think we got to see Shira at some point, and that's pretty drool worthy too. Especially if there's pictures of her. Right? Actual photos, not drawings.
Yeah, photos of the real Shira Seastar.
Okay, so I hope that answers your question, Hand to the King, Cash Craig, and we have a new title for you at the end of the episode.
All right, the next question is right here.
We have from Thunderclap. Boom, good name. Characters in the books have PTSD. Do you think Tyrion is suffering from bipolar disorder?
Now, me personally, I've never considered this before. It definitely gave me some thought. I don't think he has bipolar disorder personally. I'm someone with bipolar disorder myself, so I have a little bit of perspective on it. I've never considered it. When I reread it next, I'm definitely going to try to look at that. He definitely has depression at times, and his wit might be like reminiscent to someone of like mania, but I think it's PTSD and depression that he's dealing with.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely going to look at it again. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, from our pop psychology,
armchair
psychology guesses. Yeah, I agree with Tashaya's take there. And I also think that I think that I mean, bipolar is, you go through swings, and Tyrion doesn't seem to have that. He's kind of consistent with his moods, I think. And he's also you would think maybe he would have self-esteem issues, but he doesn't seem to. He seems to accept who he is. And he doesn't seem to have any trouble giving people orders, and he doesn't seem to have any trouble behaving like a lord. He is a much different person when he's with Tywin. Of course, that's not going to happen again. Yeah. But that's a really good question, and it's a question in line with the theme of the books, which is the characters. This is about the characters. This is something that's going to come up with some of these other questions as well, and so I want to bring that up now to sort of set the stage a bit. Song of Ice and Fire is a fantasy world, of course, but it's that we're presented with the characters and how they respond to the fantasy world, not necessarily the other way around. So I think questions about characters' personalities and psychology, I'm always really interested in things like that and discussing that kind of thing. So thanks for the question.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Feel free to comment if you had any reasons why you were thinking about that.
Right on, right on.
Our next question is from Stephen Atwell.
It's good old Stephen Atwell. Hey, buddy. Do the Volantines allow the sons of freedmen to vote? Of course, we would expect a deep political question from Stephen. I am pretty sure they would. Well, they certainly wouldn't allow the Sons of Freedmen to vote in general. But what my understanding is that the Volantines are allowed to vote if they own land. So I guess the question is, can the Sons of Freedmen own land? Because if they can, then they should be able to vote. But I'm not sure if there's a method or a means for the Sons of a freedman is a former slave, just in case that's not clear. So the son of a former slave, you can see why they would be looked down on and perhaps not have the rights that others would have. You know, that doesn't sound right, but it sounds the way it would be in a society like that. So I think that's the best I can say. If they are allowed to own land, they should be allowed to vote. But I'm not 100%
And if they're able to acquire that land,
right?
Whether they're allowed to or not, whether they have the means to do it.
Yeah, that's a whole other question, and often going to be pretty hard for a former slave's son to become wealthy enough to own land.
All right. Then the next question is from another podcaster and essayist.
Yeah, Nina Friel. Here we go. If you could give words to one house without an as yet confirmed motto, which house would it be, and what would be the motto? Well, that's
first.
Yeah, that's first of all a great question, Nina, because we're both really silly people, so this gives us a chance to be extra silly. And I'm feeling particularly silly today because this is a live episode, and I don't know, it just gives me more license to be goofy.
You have an audience, a live audience?
Yeah. Look, and they're quickly vanishing. Look, with 0 people watching. No, I'm just kidding. They heard I was going to start punning, and they all ran away.
Okay, here's I came up with a few myself. For House Shet, it happens. And for House Bracken, better than Blackwood.
My favorite for House Bracken is, like the Ancient Aliens guy, or is his aliens? I think Bracken's is horses. Or in the case of House Frey, they're meat, as in the meat in a pie, right? Yeah, something like that. Or wash it down with Arbor Gold. That's my other Frey motto. I also like House Blackwood. I've got one for them: Ravens and Rivals. Or House Night's King. Night makes right.
Or House Dane of High Hermitage. So edgy.
I am of the night.
Yeah.
Or House Dane, the regular House Dane. Probably something to do with dawn. That's not really very funny, though. So how about the nighttime is the wrong time?
Yeah. Those are fun to come up with.
Yeah, I like house mottos are fun. That's one of the great things about Game of Thrones. It's also one of the great things that I think attracted HBO to it. They knew they could sell that. They could sell mottos on mugs and keychains and posters. They weren't wrong.
We still don't have the exact perfect one for History of Westeros, though.
Nope.
Though I think Pimply Gingerlad is the perfect motto for us.
Read the books.
Yeah, read the books. That's a pretty good one. But moving on to, lo and behold, yet another YouTuber.
Right on. Hey there, BarTube.
Right.
How's it going? Hey, what is the top mystery that will be probably resolved in the Winds of Winter? The ones that we're most interested in, that is Rob's Will, the Valonqar, etc. Okay, great question. Big question.
Yeah.
Also.
Go with our first answers that came up that we thought of. For me, what's going down at Old Town? That's the thing I most care about. I can't think of anything I care about more.
Same thing. I did the same thing. My head kind of swam when I heard the question, and so I just tried to the first thing that came to my head, though, was the pink letter. It's a big mystery. I don't know that I care about it more than other things, but it is a big mystery that has majorly debated in the fandom. And it's, as far as your questions that will definitely be resolved, I think that's in the top percentile of things that we can be pretty confident will be resolved one way or another. I don't know if that whole plot line will have resolved, but the author of the letter, we should at least know that much. I hope. If not, then these other guesses may not be so great either. But I'm really curious about there's all these horns that have been building up. A whole bunch of different horns. There's the horn that Sam has that's broken. There's the dragon binder. What are these horns going to do? And is anyone going to blow them anywhere near something that could matter? Like dragon binder got blown, but there were no dragons nearby. And so, yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to that. Although that may wait a bit longer. Possibly related to the horns is how the others will get through, around, or break the wall. How that's going to happen. That's kind of an open mystery. I don't think it's something that's like an open question like, gee, how are the others going to blah, blah, blah. But it is a question like, how is the others' plot line going to progress, and that pretty much I think everyone assumes they're going to get through the wall or break it entirely somehow. And that I'm looking forward to that. We can actually use this to pivot to another question from our good friend Jim McGeehan, who's asking us, what do you think will be the final fate of the wall? And I think that there's really two possibilities, I think, that I could come up with. Maybe you've got a third idea, but I think it's either going to come all the way down, or it's just going to be broken like a big chunk where the others can pass through. The whole thing coming down seems kind of crazy, right?
I think, personally, that it's going to be like all broken down and then like chopped up to make some nice crushed ice for like a giant's drink. That's my theory.
An ice shake.
Yeah, that's what I think.
So I don't. Yeah. So there's okay. So there's three possibilities.
Possibilities. Ice for a giant's beverage, coming down entirely, just broken to allow some things to get through.
Right on. Now, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how that happens. The method of it could be the horn. It could be something else. And hold off for a minute on some of the other possibilities, because there's some other questions people have asked that tie into that. So stay tuned for more possibilities on the wall. And one other thing I wanted to get to, though, because back to Bar's question, which is the truth of Aegon's parentage, as in young Griff. There's a lot of parentage questions in A Song of Ice and Fire, as we know. There's the biggest one is Jon's, although I think most people agree on that one. There's also some questions about Tyrion's parentage potentially, and of course, young Griff. Now, of those three, I think Tyrion's is the one that's least likely to be given a definitive answer, as if, and it may be that a definitive answer isn't needed. Some people who are very sure that he's Tywin's son would be amongst those. But I think of those mysteries, Aegon's is the one that's the most likely to be resolved, because there's somebody who actually knows, who's a big part of the story. Varys knows the answer one way or the other, and potentially Illyrio as well, and some others. So those are the, unlike for Jon, we only have Hal and Reed, basically. Maybe the nursemaid, Wyla, or somebody.
Or Bran seeing some definitive information.
The Werewood Network opens up the potential for pretty much anyone to have any answer about any question given. So that aside, we have this. So yeah, a lot of good possibilities there. So hopefully our guesses are close to right. But I would love to be surprised. You know, we spend so much time thinking about these things. We think we figured them out, but maybe we're completely wrong. We might be surprised. I'm sure George has several surprises in store for us, and the wall might be a good spot for that. All right, moving on. Let's see here. We have Kirsten Xilo asking the question, which of the smaller mysteries in Game of Thrones do you think will be important in the end? Dany's childhood house, Quaithe, Ashai, Shrouded Lord, Grayscale, Patchface, Tyrek, Gravedigger, Deep Ones, something else? Which small facts do you think matter? Okay.
I love the stuff about all the Deep Ones and the Blackstone. I don't think it's going to be relevant myself to the actual series. Grayscale, I think, is definitely relevant. I don't know whether any mystery about it will be relevant, but it itself, there's going to be an outbreak. I agree.
I think Grayscale. We've only scratched the surface of what Grayscale's impact on the story is going to be. Scratch the surface of Grayscale. Yeah. Okay. That pun was not intentional. Tyrek, I do think that one will be resolved. I think it will be mildly important. I think that there might be something to that. The theory that Varys snatched him is interesting, although it seems maybe a bit much to have known that the riot would start right then. But it may have been an opportunity that he was waiting to find a chance to capitalize on. I do think that the Gravedigger is important. I do think it's Sandor, and I do think that's going to be important. I think Sandor is going to come back into the story. I don't think he's going to fight his brother at the trial by combat.
No Clegane Bowl.
He's no Clegane Bowl. They may fight eventually, but it won't be at a trial because he's just not healthy enough yet, and there's just no means for him to find out about it. And kind of like he's going to just run off and hear about this trial and run off south of King's Landing. The dude still has a severe limp. I just don't. It wouldn't be realistic for him to win that fight if he does go. And I don't think he would try, because I think he would know that too.
Even just getting there in time is hard.
So, but I do think he's going to come up later. I don't know how. I couldn't guess at what his importance will be, but I think he'll be back.
I guess moving on to some other smaller mysteries, we'll move on to this question about Benjen Stark.
what are your thoughts and predictions on Benjen Stark? We got a couple of Benjen Stark questions, although they're somewhat related. So we'll start with this one, though.
Yeah,
and
personally, Benjen is a question who's asked a lot. I've found myself hoping that nothing comes of him at all. People are probably mad at me, shaking their fists. I kind of want him to just be left dangling forever. I just like the idea that sometimes people just disappear and die, and it isn't a big plot point. Sometimes that happens.
I'd be fine with that, personally. I think that there might be more to it, and I don't think that he's just out there surviving by himself, that he's just been on the run from the others, and he's just been somehow like, why wouldn't he? There's no reason why he couldn't have gone south to get back to the wall, if that's the case. So the tinfoil idea I've heard that I don't think is too tinfoily, and I'll explain why. But first, the actual idea, which is that the others actually have him in captivity somehow. They're holding on to him. They need his blood because he's a Stark for something. Maybe to break the wall. That's the best guess I have. Maybe to do some damage to Winterfell. I don't know. But the reason I don't think that's too tinfoil, even though it's this crazy magical idea, is because we're talking about the others. The others are magical beings. They're already supernatural in the first place. I think any kind of magic you associate with them is less crackpot than, say, associating magic with characters that have never shown any sort of magic at all. You know, like guessing that this guy is glamored as this guy is weird because this person's never shown any attachment or association with that type of magic before. But the others, that's a big unknown, what they're capable of. They're certainly magical beings. So I think there's a little more leeway to be creative with the potential things they can do. And I have more leeway for considering these things less tinfoily.
Here's another question that wasn't asked on the Q&A, but we did catch it anyways. It's from Patrick Simpson. Why did Benjen join the Night's Watch? And for me personally, this has bugged me for a while. It just seems foolish to me. I can see how it's possible for someone to make this choice, but it makes me like Benjen less that he would choose to do this.
I think that it's important to note that Robb had been born by then, so at least there were 2 male Starks, and Catelyn may have already been pregnant with Sansa when he made the decision. I'm not quite sure on the timeline there, but yeah, it really could just be, it might not have been some group decision where they're like, you should join the Night's Watch now. I think Benjen might have just really wanted it, and he just was like, hey, can I go? Can I go? Can I go? And Ned's like, well, hang on, not yet, not yet. Okay, now go. I mean, maybe he just kept asking for it. It may have been foolish.
He could have been dreaming about it his whole life, and they've just been putting it off during the war, and he was, he just really wanted to join the Night's Watch.
And he certainly rose to become First Ranger, so obviously he, belongs there, you could say. He did his
wonder if he would have been Lord Commander.
I think he would have.
He would have. I wonder if, he was First Ranger. I just wonder if he was groomed at all in the same way that Jon was groomed. I think
it's because he's a Stark and he's from the North. I think that would have just been such a natural thing. I mean, there was a 10-year-old Stark apparently that was next Lord Commander.
My question is, Jon was, not just a Ranger. So I wonder if Benjen had that time period where he wasn't just a Ranger.
Yeah, he may have been a steward for a while. That's true. It's probably usually the case though that they don't groom a successor.
So I think it was just because Benjen's gone, so he was like, oh, I have to groom someone. He has to be ready. Yeah. Jon has to be ready. That's, I guess, more the case.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. Okay, well, hopefully that is a sufficient answer on Benjen for now. We hope to learn more. I do think that we will learn more about him in the Winds of Winter. I don't think we'll go a whole nother book with nothing on Benjen, especially because the others, that plot line is really starting to come to the front.
All right, next question.
Which characters do you think are most likely to die in the Winds of Winter? By Alex Stroup. Apologize if I pronounced the name wrong. Well, it's a bit of a depressing question. No, not really. It's a fun question, actually. I do think there are quite a few who I think are on the hit list. I think Barristan is up there. I think Brienne is on the list.
Tommen and Myrcella.
Yeah, Tommen and Myrcella, very much on there. Theon is kind of on thin ice, pun intended.
Doran Martell.
It's clear that his health is getting worse. I don't think anyone's just going to kill him, but I think it would be a more compelling story if Arianne is in charge and not entirely clear on what's happening. She's just become, her father trusts her more than he used to, but I think that would make things interesting.
Yeah, it'd be real tragic if he died before she came back from her trip right there.
Yeah.
I would be so sad. I'm sad just thinking, let's move on.
And I think some of the other characters, some of the other Dornish characters might be in danger as well. They're the ones who have been sent to hunt Darkstar, I think, are in particular danger. I don't know that Hotah is in danger since he's a POV, although I think he's in danger eventually. But I think he's got to at least survive long enough to show us whatever it is we're going to see at High Hermitage or in that area. Yeah. So Obara, I think, is in danger, although she's not, a super important character. She's certainly noteworthy, significant enough, and I do think she's in trouble. And potentially the same goes for Balon Swan, who's with them. I think I kind of imagine Darkstar has some sort of trap plan for them. He kind of knows they're going to be coming for him, and he's not just going to wait for them to come without preparing for it. So that's going to be interesting. But
hopefully both Boltons.
Yeah, I think
not one.
I think only one Bolton is going to go. I doubt they both survive, but yeah, I could easily see them both going down. It'd be funny if the Dreadfort was held by Fat Welda only. Fat Welda and a few, and Steelshanks Walton holding the Dreadfort by themselves. And I think maybe Mance Rayder as well is maybe on the chopping block, but also pretty much all of the remaining Night's Watch. I think pretty much all of them are in big trouble because I just don't see the others not penetrating into the north, and I don't see that happening without the Night's Watch trying to stop them, and they're obviously not going to succeed if the others get much farther south. So, sorry, folks. I'm real worried about Pip, Gren, Dolorous Ed, maybe Iron Emmett. I don't know. At least maybe one of the two of those guys might get out, but I'm worried.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to the next question.
All right.
How about another question from Kieran O'Hagan? Do you think Dany will go straight to Westeros or march westward with her armies and dragons to lay waste to cities like Volantis to have crossed her? I think there's a very good chance she stops in some other cities on her way. Absolutely, especially because I think the Volantene slave army might very well just try to flip sides and join her, and they will be all for liberating other slaves, I would think. I think Pentos is another likely enough destination, especially since the Tattered Prince has been promised Pentos by Barristan. And because Illyrio is there, so there's other reasons to go there. So, yeah, I don't see them going to, say, Lys or all the way to Bravos. That'd be really out of the way. I don't see them necessarily going to Myr or Tyrosh, although Tyrosh is kind of in the way, and so is Myr. But I think that Volantis is not unlikely. Pentos is fairly likely. Those are probably the top two, I'd say. And the others are pretty much out of the question, I think. I don't think the story will include them.
So let's move on to a question that isn't in our Q&A, but is somewhat related to this. It is, will all three of Dany's dragons make it to Westeros? If not, which one dies, and how do they get there?
That's from Drew Hinks, or Drew Hinkus, sorry. And that is a great question. And I think, do you think they'll all make it? Or?
Yeah, I tend to think that they'll all make it to Westeros. I don't think they'll make it through the series, but I think they'll get it to Westeros.
I agree. And if one of them does die, my bet is on Viserion, because there's a slight spoiler from the Winds of Winter here, which is that there was a little bit of blood on the white Syvast dragon that Tyrion picks off on the ground. There's a lot of different interpretations of that. This is certainly not the only possibility for what the blood on that dragon piece means. But one possibility is that it means that dragon is in trouble and that he's doomed. Also, Viserion is the weakest dragon, I believe. That's from the descriptions, although he's not unhealthy or weak, just of the three. So as far as how they get to Westeros, that is a huge question. That's kind of difficult to answer. But we do know it's possible. There is a precedent set, at least. Balerion was ridden by Aegon, the Conqueror, who flew off from Dragonstone to participate in the war against Volantis that came during the Century of Blood, which followed the doom of Valyria, of course. And this is at the end of the Century of Blood still. Anyway, Aegon took the side against Volantis. Volantis was trying to restore the Valyrian Empire as best as they could under their control. And so clearly Aegon was able to get his dragon over the water, and Balerion was full grown then, so it wasn't... none of the dragons Dany has are remotely the size of Balerion. So if it could be done there, it can be done this way. But it could just be that dragons have a lot more flying stamina than we think. He may have flown it from Dragonstone across the Narrow Sea. I believe Maegor did the same with Balerion, who flew Balerion from Pentos to Dragonstone once Visenya came to tell him that Aenys had died and that he should come to seize the crown. And of course, that means Visenya flew Vhagar to Pentos too. So I think there's enough evidence that the dragons can actually fly that far, that they don't need to be on a ship. But if they can be put on a ship, then I assume George will explain that somehow. But I'm going pretty heavily towards they can fly that far.
All right. So I believe these next questions were asked via Patreon by Mary Harrison. Is that correct, Aziz?
I believe so. That's right.
So
Yep.
we'll read them out loud. They're not through the Q&A feature. The first... Should I? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
The first question is Lady Dustin being honest about her loyalty to Roose, or did she say those things to Theon because she assumed he'd tell Roose everything? From Mary Harrison.
Right on. Now, I think that that's a very good possibility. Lady Dustin, one thing we can know for sure about her, whatever we believe her ambitions or interests are, she is not stupid. She is intelligent. And so she knows that what she tells Theon is at least going to get back to him, if not to Ramsay. Maybe she thinks that it's more likely to go to Ramsay than to Roose. But either way, she can't possibly think that she can just say all those things to Theon and not have them get back to him. So she has to know what she's saying. So yeah, I think that she's playing both sides a little bit. I don't think she's planning on betraying Roose. I just think she sees that as an option. I think she's a lot like Roose, that she's just going to do what's best for her. If that means keeping her alliance with the Boltons, that's what she's going to do. But if the Bolton alliance ship starts to sink, she'll be one of the first rats to jump off. She doesn't have to side with the Starks just because she's not siding with the Boltons anymore. It's not like it's just Bolton or Stark. She could just sit on the sidelines and do nothing, sit in her castle and wait for things to resolve themselves. No one's going to come attack her when she's not an enemy, especially when they've got other enemies to deal with. So... yeah, so to answer more specifically to answer the question, yes, I definitely think that she's not being honest, I guess, is the to respond to how the way the question was asked. Now, another question from Mary. Sansa sees two castles in the clouds merging into one on the day of Joffrey's wedding. But maybe a bit of foreshadowing. She suggests that it's foreshadowing for the downfall of the Freys. Interesting interpretation. I think it's more simple, though. I think it's just the two castles merging is like symbolic of two houses merging, just like the wedding that's about to happen. Joffrey's wedding. I think that was just Joffrey marrying Marjorie, and that's the merging of the castles. But I like that idea, and honestly, I never caught that. I never caught that reference, that the castles in the sky. I never missed that. So good catch. I'm sure other people missed it. Sure, other users are like, how did you miss that one, Aziz? Okay, so another one from Mary. What are Pate/Jaqen/the Faceless Men after in the Citadel? Very good question. And this is one of the things you were asking about, or you're not asking about, is things that one of the things you were most interested in finding out about in the next book, that the question that Bar asked us about mysteries that we want to see resolved.
Yeah, and it also ties into, I'll select this question from Arahant Viralkar. So I don't have my glasses on. I can hardly read your last name here. I'm sure I didn't say it exactly right, but I'm just pulling it up so that it is easy to reach. Who asks, where do you think Samwell's arc is going? Most people in the fandom think he'll find valuable information at the Citadel. What do you think he might find? Septon Barth's missing scrolls / info on White Walkers, or something else?
I hope so. I can't wait for Sam to get in the vault and start reading these old books. Some of my favorite chapters are Sam chapters because he deals with ancient material and ancient books and stuff like that. And
hopefully, I personally, I feel like one thing his arc is going to deal with for sure is this attack on Old Town.
Yes, definitely.
And that might just be very frustrating to us.
Yeah, because he's distracted by ransacking, reaving Iron Man when he should be reading. So, but yeah, I hope he finds some Septon Bar stuff. That would make me jump out of my seat. I would be really excited for that. I think a lot of the rest of you would be as well. But I do think I do think that he is going to find something on the White Walkers. I think there is more to come. He is, other than Bran, who can, whose abilities to figure things out are just so wide open given the Weirwood network. Other than him, Sam is our vehicle to, or is the character's vehicle to defeating the others. He's the one that as far as information. He's not the guy that's going to be out there doing the work, but he's the guy that can supply them with knowledge. He's the one that got everybody to carry around dragonglass daggers again.
Yeah.
That might be just a taste of what he's going to do later. He might be in charge of some program to properly arm the people who are fighting up against the others in White Walker. He may lead that effort to properly outfit and equip people, the one to teach people to use fire, to maybe to show the value of Valyrian steel, or to show the value of certain other tactics or whatever. We don't know. It's hard to guess at the specifics because it's all such unknown territory.
Yeah, I do think the Faceless Men are likely after something to do with the death of dragons, perhaps at the Citadel.
That was the first major theory regarding the Jake in there, and I still think that theory is totally valid. Now, to be clear, Tyrion points out to Halden Halfmaester, because Tyrion was tasked by John Connington of writing down everything he knew about dragons. And at one point, he's thinking to himself, gosh, I wish I had The Death of Dragons, which is this book that he says there's only one copy of, and it's in the Citadel's vault. It's the only clue that we've been given about what's in the Citadel's vault, only specific clue.
Yeah.
And here we have some character trying to get into the vault. So maybe it's too simple to just think that's 2 + 2.
But the Faceless Men are not fans of dragons.
So the book is called The Death of Dragons. I might be trying to look up ways to kill dragons like that. I could see that knowledge being lost because no one's had to deal with dragons in quite a while. So yeah, but and if he's looking for something else, I don't know what it could be. But I do think it's that book. I really think that's what George has spelled out for us. Although he was pretty subtle about it, the clue is there. Once you're looking for it and you see it, it looks pretty distinct.
Yeah. Let's move on to our last question from Mary Harrison, and then we'll move back to Q&A questions. Her question is, what are our favorite chapters?
That's a good one. What about you? I have a hard time with that.
One of my favorites is actually it's Ario 1. It's when all the sand snakes are introduced and Doran's introduced, and I just think I like how it's introduced one by one, how we hear their plans and then we see it contrasted. I like the writing of the the fruit falling. It's just very visceral. I also really like Sansa's Snow Castle chapter in terms of prose and writing and all of that.
I was thinking about this question ahead of this recording, and I didn't get very far. I almost wanted to say what's my favorite chapter by book, and even that's too hard. Some of them are kind of a wash. In Game of Thrones, my favorite chapter might just be the first chapter. It's just just really gets it all kicked off really nicely. But I also I get fired up by the King in the North, even though I know it's a total disaster. It still fires me up. And from Clash of Kings, I don't know. I like the Battle of Blackwater. It's really cool. Although that's not one chapter. That's several chapters. So I don't know which one. Maybe some of the Davos points of view, because Davos is like real nervous about going into battle, and he sees so much, and he's got a lot of interesting insights on what they can expect.
I also really like the Septon Maribald's speech chapter. It's not
That's what I was going to say.
It's not so much that chapter that I like; it's that speech that I like.
Yeah, the Broken Men speech is amazing, and the Elder Brother, same thing. Like Feast for Prose, underrated, very underrated. It may not have the most exciting moments in it, but it's got some of the best writing, some of the saddest writing. Aemon's death is in that book too. Oh man, let's not talk about that, right?
No.
So. I'm sorry I can't answer more distinctly. I have a lot. It's really tough. I love the series so much that just elevating one chapter above the other is just tough. I did say earlier that I like a lot of the Sam chapters because of the history they have in there. So maybe I should go with that. I like the Sam chapter in Feast where he's just talking about the others and stuff like that. And then John cuts him off. Oh, he's talking to Marwyn. Yeah, that's really good. That's really good too. Okay, well, we're not getting any farther with favorite chapters. We'll have to move on.
All right, our next Q&A question here, these we'll read.
We have from James Buchel. Hey, James, how you doing? It's quite apparent that Mirri Maz Duur was the betrayal of blood from Dany's House of the Undying prophecy. So who do you guys believe Dany's betrayal of gold? I'm not sold Jorah is one of the betrayals. And who will the betrayal of love be as well? First of all, I agree that Jorah was not one of the betrayals. His betrayal hurt Dany in terms of like psychologically, but it didn't harm her cause really. It wasn't like a betrayal that like stopped her from doing what she wanted to do. So I tend to agree with you that that's not the real betrayal. That was maybe a red herring betrayal. Okay, so this is a tough question though. But I want to start off actually by suggesting alternative ways to think about it rather than just giving answers, although I'm going to give some answers also. Note that gold could be betrayed for money. Like, I think that's the common interpretation, but it could mean something else, like the golden hair of the Lannisters. I'm not sure how that would connect, but it's just the line of thinking is what I'm getting at, not necessarily that specific example. The Golden Company.
Yeah.
We've seen this kind of metaphors a lot. The gold beneath the gold, the bitter steel is it's not their official motto, but it's one of their sayings. And
the gold beneath the gold.
The gold beneath the gold. And the Lannister gold, that's been many times we've seen that come up. But also we've seen gold referred to crowns and things like that and money. It's a really open-ended question. And if it relates to the Golden Company, it could be someone leaving her to side with Aegon and the Golden Company. And I think the most likely candidate for that would be Barristan. Which is, but that would be the betrayal for love, actually, in my mind, not gold, because I can't get around why he thinks about Ashara Dane. Now, I don't think Ashara Dane is Septa Lemore, because Tyrion would not miss. I just think that's bad writing if Septa Lemore is Ashara Dane, because Tyrion like drools over her body, looks at her up and down. How is he not going to notice her purple eyes, especially after he does notice Aegon's and he does notice Connington's eye color? He points at pretty much everyone's eye color. So that would be kind of cheap if he just didn't write that, so we wouldn't catch it. So I don't think it's Septa Lemore, although I think her identity is interesting. I don't think it's her. So if Ashara Dane turns up alive somehow, that's probably the only thing I could see Barristan switching sides for. Although it's possible because he might believe that Rhaegar, if he really believes it's Rhaegar's son, that he would feel honor bound to follow Rhaegar's son instead of Dany. But that is less compelling to me as a possibility. I do think it's possible, but I don't know if that's enough to make Barristan change sides. Yeah. So
do we think it's possible one of the betrayals is someone she hasn't yet become close with?
That's possible. That is very possible. And that is outside the scope of what I was thinking, partly because it's hard to see who she will meet up with later. But I want to also approach this question. Is another way to think about the question I think is interesting, which is that, okay, when you're thinking about, say, a similar question of unknowns, like who are the three heads of the dragon? One thing that dawned on me one day is that no matter how many candidates you have for the three heads of the dragon, it's a short list. Yeah. So you can't possibly. There's not a lot of different combinations of possibilities. Everyone's like, okay, Dany, and then there's like 4 other possibilities, and that's it. And for 2 slots, and that's the same thing here. How many people could betray Dany in a way that would actually be really meaningful or matter in a way that is important? So you think about who's important to her, who's close to her. We're talking about Barristan. Missandei, I don't see it. Missandei betraying her, I really don't see that. Daario, I could see Daario betraying her for gold, though, maybe not for love. I don't think Daario would betray her for love. It might be a betrayal of love, but that's tough. Grey Worm, no way. Grey Worm doesn't betray her. That's not going to happen. Same with her Blood Riders. Those are the others that are really close to her. Also, not going to happen. Illyrio, I don't know. Illyrio maybe isn't trustworthy in the first place. So I don't know that she should be trusting him, and I think she knows that. I think Jorah instilled a healthy mistrust in him, or in her about him, and about a lot of other things. So Jorah was good at teaching her to be mistrustful. So, like when Brown Ben Plum switched sides, some people I think a lot of us just dismissed that. We were like, that's probably not the betrayal for gold, and it's for the same reason. He didn't do anything. He switched sides, but he didn't attack her. He didn't fight her, and it appears that he's just going to switch back. So, yeah. Tough question. Good question. Very tough question. But I hopefully, since I couldn't give too many specific answers, hopefully my ways of thinking about the question were enlightening enough or helpful. Okay, so let us move on to the next question.
The next question, this one isn't via the Q&A, is it either? But it's related to this slightly. Well, it's not really related, but it's a good segue from the Ashara Dane and stuff.
True, from Ashara.
It's not in the Q&A though, right?
No, it's not. Okay, so from Drew Hinkus again. If Brandon hadn't died, who would Ned have married? I think it might have been. You think it might have been a northern woman, but
yeah, I think it's possible. Just because when you think about like the Lord Paramounts, if Rickard has southern ambitions, there just aren't a lot of Lord Paramounts for him to choose from with marriageable daughters.
How about Ned marrying Cersei?
Yeah, I have seen a lot of stuff about people like talking about what if that had happened.
Yeah,
which is weird, but yeah.
I think that if you know, if he didn't marry someone in the North, which I think is very possible that he would go outside the North, given that he went outside the North with his other kids, that it would be someone in the Vale or the Riverlands to shore up those alliances, because was obviously trying to get those realms as allies, and he would, you know, is nothing like making it stronger. Someone like Tywin points that out, that one marriage is good, but multiple marriages is this tempering the sword of alliance. It's not the exact word he used, but he talks about how it's sometimes important to do multiples like that to really make it count, which is what he had in mind with the Tyrells. That's why he was thinking of maybe having Cersei marry, you know, a Tyrell or something like that. Willis in particular. So, okay, let's move on. Oh, actually, one other possibility. Maybe he would have married Lady Dustin or Lady Riz. She would have been Lady Riswell. Or she would have been Lady Stark, really.
One of the northern women.
That's a possibility.
Yeah. Let's see. Let me find. I'm manning the questions, and man, you guys are asking a lot of questions.
Good job, folks. Thank you for all the questions. Apologize in advance. At this rate, it looks like we won't get to them all, but as we said at the beginning, this will be a regular thing, the Q&A episodes. So if your question doesn't get asked, please post it again. It's certainly nothing personal, certainly nothing, doesn't say anything about the quality of your question. It's just that we have a lot of
There's just
questions.
a lot.
And we want to answer thoroughly.
That's why I'm not answering as many right now, because I'm just trying to sort through them all. Let's answer some that are just one-off, just clear these out, some that are comments. Some responses, for instance, from Nina Friel. She said, personally, I like the one I saw for House Read within our site.
Ooh, that's a good one. Again, that's the House Mottos thing again. That's a good one. I like that. Within our site. Yeah, I like it.
And then we have
Agreeing with envy.
Yeah. We have another good one. A nice message to Nina Friel right here. Says,
Nina,
you're
awesome. I love your essays and recording. Felicia Emma. Thanks, Felicia, for saying that to Nina, and thanks for being a fan of us as well. We agree. Yes.
Now let's see some other easy responses. Maybe not so short, but this one's a good one to make sure we answer.
Okay, yeah. What advice do you have for someone considering starting a podcast when related to Song of Ice and Fire? Okay, from Robert Neal. Great question. I would say for someone starting a podcast, I think you have to keep in mind that you need to stick with it. We have been doing this for several years now. We're past 3 years now, and for the first couple of years, it was just kind of a hobby. It was fun. We took it, we put our work into it. We put the effort in, but it was mostly for fun, but we waited. We were very patient with allowing our subscriber base to grow. And that's something that you cannot allow yourself to get too discouraged by, because it takes time. The main thing that has allowed our podcast to spread is word of mouth. And that takes a while to take effect. When someone tells you, hey, this podcast I heard is great, most people aren't just going to immediately go listen to it the next day or the same day. But eventually, after hearing a few times, like, oh yeah, I've been meaning to check that podcast. So yeah, a few months later, maybe they check it out. And then a few weeks later, they finally realize, hey, I really like this podcast. So it takes a while. So I got to say, you got to be patient. And you just make sure, don't make the mistakes we did at the beginning, which was get a decent microphone right away, figure out how to not have bad quality, figure out how to make it right. Explaining all that in this it would take too long to go through the details of that. But get a list and follow it. Make a checklist of steps before recording. So I want to do this. I want to turn off all the sounds in my house. Turn off my phone so I don't get that. Make a checklist. Update it, follow it, get a procedure, because there's so many things that go into this that you can forget. We're always forgetting little steps.
My tips are just, I don't know what your subject would be, but be passionate and be prepared.
Be passionate. That's a good one. I should have said that.
It's unpleasant to hear someone, who is this? What's this guy's name? I don't know. Like, look it up. Just have someone look it up, or look it up beforehand, or don't make the listener have to listen to you talk about who this person is you don't know for 5 minutes.
Yeah. I think that's huge. I think that's something that people responded to us a lot. When we were starting off, we got that kind of feedback a lot, that they appreciated how prepared we were. So I would say that worked for us. I can imagine it works for everyone. I think everyone appreciates when you take their time into consideration. We have long episodes, but it's, we jam them full of information. There's not a lot of wasted time in there. Not that other people do that. I'm just saying this is our way of doing it.
Let's move on to a question from Yoke Boy.
Yeah, somewhat similar question. In the same vein anyway. Why did you start podcasting? Well, hello, Yoke Boy from England. We're always happy to hear from you, and looking forward to having you back as a guest at some point. Now, why did we start podcasting? Well, myself, I started because I was invited to. I started paying attention to this podcast when it was new, when Steve Mangiamelli started it, and we had a mutual friend, and it was the mutual friend suggested that we work together, and I helped him out. I was just like giving him some advice and helping him out and answering some questions, and it just kind of took off from there.
Yeah.
But honestly, the other thing that was really important was that I listened to a lot of hardcore history, Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, which is one of the biggest podcasts there is. And a lot of the things that I was just giving advice about on starting podcasts, the things I got from him. Not that he told me personally, just things that I learned by listening to him. Mostly the thing that Ashaya said, which was to be enthusiastic, to be passionate. He makes history interesting. Some of his episodes are 5 hours long. And even in 4 hours in, he's still like talking like I am right now. Like he's like, yeah, like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and what can you imagine how they felt and all this? And it keeps me listening, keeps me engaged. Like 2 hours later, I'm still like, yeah, what's happening? I'm ignoring everything around me because I'm just so intent on what's happening. So yeah, that's really important. And so that showed me, I know that I'm a person that can be enthusiastic about things that I'm into. So I'm like, hey, I can do that. I don't know what topic, but I can do that. And then the idea of Song of Ice and Fire comes like, I can do that. And Ashaya, what about you though? I kind of hogged that question.
Yeah, you did. Aziz had joined it. I'm actually in the first episode that Aziz is in. It was a call-in. Like, it was very different technology to what we're using now.
Yeah.
And so I was in that one, just barely, just my voice. And then cat in the way. And then I a couple episodes in, they wanted another guest, and I live here. So it just kind of worked out. I was like, yeah, sure, I'll be on it. And it was pretty fun. And then it got to be the point where Aziz needed someone. He didn't want to do it alone, really. It's just harder to record alone than it is to have someone to just take a break, stop talking for a minute. So it just
different voices.
I just sort of fell into it. As you can see, when he has other guests, sometimes I just take a break and I'm not in it because it's a lot of work to record these things.
Yeah, and you're a full-time student, which you had lots of time that's taken up by that, which is that's just the way it should be. But it is what it is. It does take a lot of time.
So we both just sort of fell into it. Neither of us had that let's start the podcast moment.
Yeah, that's true. It was very gradual, and it gathered steam gradually, and here we are. I'd like to think that one more thing I want to say on that is that we've always had an attitude of gradually trying to improve the show. Sometimes it's very slow. Our changes come very slow, but very surely. We've upgraded our technology. We've upgraded our background. We've upgraded our methodology for recording. That's stuff that's not necessarily apparent to all you on the other end, only in the results. Obviously, we're putting out episodes more frequently, and we're putting a lot more time into it because it's now the majority of my living at this point, and I'm trying to make it my full living. So, great question. Thanks, Yoko.
Here's another great question, also related to the podcasting subject here. One, love you guys, they said.
Well, thanks.
And then they asked us what the one collab is that we haven't done that we would like to do from the Archmagus Eternal.
That's a great question. I don't know.
That definitely is an interesting question.
There are a lot of...
Obviously, the dream collaboration is George R. R. Martin himself. Always, that you can't not get that question.
Might as well dream big.
Yeah, might as well dream big.
Wow, I really don't know. There's a lot of other podcasters that we could collab with, but some of them we have collabed with.
Yeah, a lot of our favorites we have, honestly. We never have had Nina Friel on herself.
Yeah, that'll happen.
We haven't actually had her on, but that's going to happen.
That seems like an inevitability.
But that technically counts.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've had.
I guess we don't have a great answer.
That one.
It would be kind of fun to bring in. It would be neat to like maybe be able to talk to some of the people involved with the production, not of the show necessarily. That would be cool too. Of some of the people behind the scenes in the book.
Yeah.
Like maybe like the editor, Anne Grohl, for example, or someone else that's worked with George,
Yeah.
Or, actually a collab that we are planning on doing at some point is we've been in contact with some of the guys that do the Histories and Lore videos, or one guy from the Histories and Lore videos, and he's apparently a fan of ours. We're certainly a fan of theirs.
Oh, yeah.
And he's a fan of House Harlaw, so we thought maybe we'd do a House Harlaw video with him at some point.
Yeah, that would
so
be very cool.
That's something that's on the shelf as a possibility.
Obviously, we're doing a kind of collaboration with that artist of the map because we helped him. It's not a collaboration as in on our end, but we're collaborating with him on his end. I suppose that counts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say those are our top choices then.
Well, you all certainly can make suggestions on people you think you'd like us to collaborate with. That's certainly a
good time
valid
to do it.
option. Yes, a good time to do it as well. All right, let's go to the next question.
Here's a good dunk and egg one that I like.
Okay.
Myself. I'm totally not being fair with this. I'm just choosing whichever ones look good.
Yeah, some people have gotten 2 questions answered, some haven't gotten any, but we're not doing that on purpose.
I'm not scrolling down to the bottom right now, so I'm sorry. Get your questions upvoted.
A lot of these are upvoted. Yeah, we're picking some of the ones that have the most votes on them, so that's a big part of it as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, the question is, will the dunk and egg title, The Village Hero, take place at Pennytree? It would be very close to Raventree and Betha Blackwood. Now, of course, the significance of that is Betha Blackwood is Egg's eventual wife.
Yes.
So having them meet when they're young, only to meet again later, would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that, I don't know if it'll be at Pennytree, but I think it's a great possibility. Mm-hmm. I do think it will be in the Riverlands. I do think that it's likely, based on where they're at now, they're in the Riverlands now.
That's possible. Also, that's where we'll see the ghost of Highheart.
Yes, that's very true. And getting a look at her 100 years ago, maybe more like 80 years ago, was very interesting. In general, the dunk and eggs, I almost look forward to those. Not as much as T-Wow, but close. Because I just love the old stuff.
All right. Let's move on to. This is one that is very quick to answer. Is the Pate that Sam will meet at the Citadel at Faceless Man? Yes, it's Jake.
Anthony Hargan Jr. Yes, we are 99.9% sure about that. The description of the Alchemist, which is Pate, by the time he switches from the Alchemist to Pate, when he's the Alchemist, the description of his face is almost word for word identical to the face that Arya sees when Jaqen departs.
Yes.
Parts of her company with her. So it's just like almost identical. So there's really not much room there for it to be anything else, I think. Yeah. Or it's George's really tricked us.
The next question is our current top voted question. 2 people have asked it. This one is from Euron Cow's Eye.
Great name. How old do you think Melisandre really is? And what is her story? Do you subscribe to Yolk Boy's theory that Shiera plus Bloodraven equals Melisandre?
Yeah.
Well,
personally, I've never been a big fan of secret, hidden ancestry theories, but as these theories go, this one isn't insane.
No, yeah, not at all. The other person who asked this question, by the way, Sir Adam the Consummator. Thanks to Sir Adam and to Euron Cow's Eye. First of all, to answer the initial part of the question, how old do you think she is? I think she's at least 100 years old. I've seen estimates as high as 400. But once you're past 100, there's just really no way to guess how much older than that she is. But I do think that her appearance is not what it seems. I do think she's much older than it looks like. And here are some of the merits to the Shiera equals Melisandre idea. And I'll also toss out a few of the things that go against it. One of the main merits is the timeline works out pretty well for it. And there's a lot of connection between symbolic connections that I won't bother to detail them all, partly because I didn't write them all down before, so I don't have them at hand. But there's another connection, which is that Egg, when he's King Aegon V, he sent missions to various places looking for arcane knowledge on how to hatch dragons, and he specifically mentioned that Ashai is one of those places. If Shiera Seastar was around at that time, she was still alive, she would have been about her 60s, so it's not a stretch at all that she'd still be around. She'd be a great candidate for him to send. She knows things about the arcane. What a great choice for an ambassador or an emissary to go figure out these things or to dig up these secrets. And if on her journey something went wrong, she's captured, blah, blah, blah. However, how does she become, Melisandre has memories of being a slave girl. Shiera was not a slave girl. So that is where it came. So that's why it's the theory is that she's her child and not actually Shiera. So the idea being that while Shiera was traveling, or that before, we have to be before this Ashai mission because Shiera would be too old. She'd be in her 60s. But of course, we don't hear about children between Bloodraven and Shiera. So, not that we necessarily would have, but it does make sense that they would have kids. They were lovers for a long time. You know, are we supposed to assume that she was infertile or that he was? It's possible. Yeah. So, if they have kids out there, well, Melisandre's probably the best potential we have. So, I think I wouldn't say I'd say it's 50-50. But if it's anywhere near 50-50, you can't call it crackpot. So I do not call it crackpot. I think it's a very reasonable. It's on the cusp of crackpot, perhaps, but it's believable. There's nothing that just outright eliminates it. There's nothing that just says no, this couldn't possibly be true. So for that reason, it remains, and I kind of like it. Another thing that strike against it is that what's the point? What's the purpose of it? I don't know. Is there a literary purpose? There doesn't always have to be a literary purpose, but there does have to be a literary purpose if it's a central plot point. This probably isn't a central plot point. It might just be an interesting reveal.
Yeah.
So, but we'll have to see, I suppose.
All right.
As with everything.
I found the next question now.
Okay.
It's here from Vincent Amor.
What do you think will happen to Cersei ultimately? Even if she survives the trial by combat, what will become of her? And furthermore, how will the Tyrells punish her for trying to lawn job their garden? Well put.
Well, I think one common theory that I'm a fan of is that, well, we're going to see Casterly Rock. And it's possible that Cersei is the way that we see Casterly Rock, and that she'll end up back there.
Especially because we're told we're not going to get new point of views, except for the epilogue.
So it's possible it's someone else at Casterly Rock, of course. It's possible it's Jaime, for instance. But I think it's Cersei. That doesn't exactly answer your question, but it's one of my thoughts.
And I think that if she goes to Casterly Rock, that implies that she will survive a while. And I kind of think that anyway. I think that, for one thing, Tommen and Myrcella probably have to die before she dies. And she's also kind of a survivor. I don't know. She's just, I think that the Valonqar prophecy is fairly accurate. So she's going to have to suffer greatly and see her children die before she goes out. So I think she might not even make it. I think she might make it through this book. Maybe won't die till the final book. Yeah. I do think she will not survive the series. I'm confident that she won't survive the series. Fairly confident. And also fairly confident that she won't die in the next book. That'll be later. I think that things are going to get really awful, that she's going to lose power, and no one's going to care about her anymore. If she loses power, getting rid of her is just something that people want to do because they hate her, but it doesn't become important anymore because she doesn't have power. She's no longer a threat, and there will be plenty of other threats that will take precedence over her. It'll be like, man, I wish I could get my revenge on Cersei, but there's this invading army, and take your pick. There's gonna be several.
That we're good with that question?
Well, I should comment on the Tyrells. Okay. The Tyrells are particularly who I'm speaking of when I think they're going to be too busy dealing with the trial, the Golden Company, and the young Griffs, Aegon/Fagon, and perhaps eventually Dany, and perhaps the invasion of the others on top of all of that. So dealing with Cersei might become like a luxury for them, like something they'd love to do, but just don't have time for.
Yeah.
All right.
You're good with that then?
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to this question because we can mainly tell them to watch a different video.
Okay.
It's in the Winds of Winter. Winds of Winter spoilers for the Elaine chapter. Not too big. We see Daddy Kettleblack arrive in the Vale. Do you think he will confirm Sansa's identity to the Mad Mouse and/or tell Sansa what happened to Jane Poole? Assuming he was in King's Landing when Jane was sent off to Winterfell as fake Arya, from Jen K. And you can watch our Elaine spoiler chapter, our Vale spoiler chapter.
You'll get a more thorough answer. I'll give you a brief answer for now. Thanks for the question. I don't know. I have no idea if Oswell, I believe it is, which I always get this Kettleblack's mixed up, is the one that's is very concerned for his son's lives right now. All three of them are facing death. And one of them is going to die almost certainly. The other two are their choice of the Wall or facing Sir Robert Strong. So they'll probably choose the Wall. So he's definitely somebody I think that could betray Peter Baelish, because Baelish may not care about what happens to his sons, and it's Peter who put his sons in the position they're in right now as double/triple agents. So he could be looking for a way to turn the tables in order to save his sons. And that could indeed involve spilling some of his secrets.
Yeah.
And one of those, probably the biggest secret he has, is Sansa's real identity. So yeah, I can see that happening. But like we said, like Ashaya said, more thoroughly answered in our Vale spoiler chapter video published, I think it was around June or March, or June or May rather.
It would have been May because it was before we saw George read it in person.
Yes, you're right, May. Halfway through the TV season.
Yeah. Anyways, to move on, this question is interesting. From AU Pack Mule, I have been thinking about Bloodraven and his name not being a normal Targaryen name. It's a Tully name, and is that significant? Well, I'd say it's a Riverlands name. Brendan is just, I'm sure it's just across all the Riverlands. Yeah,
I think it's because it's basically because of his Blackwood name. It is interesting that
it could still be significant in a out of the book sense.
I think it might be partly because Melissa Blackwood was so well loved by King Aegon the Unworthy, and it may be that he let her do the naming. Yeah. Maybe he let her give the name because he cared for her so much. And
yeah, because we see Aegor.
Yeah, Aegor certainly is very Targaryen. I mean, we don't know other Aegors. Yeah, Shiera, I don't know what that is.
So much. More like Serenade than.
Yeah, that sounds Lysine.
It would be like Shara, but it could have been kind of an amalgamation.
Yeah, that's true.
It's definitely reminiscent of Shara, which is a Targaryen name. I don't know. It's interesting. I've never actually thought about that before.
That's a good question. Yeah. Thanks for the question, AU Pack Mule.
Yeah. Next question. I'll do this one.
Who is the greatest hand of the king any monarch could wish for? Wink, wink. Well, we certainly couldn't wish for better than you, Cash Craig. But within the story,
yes.
Yeah, I don't think I would say Tywin. I don't think I would say Bloodraven.
Septon Barth.
I would say Septon Barth. Yeah, I would say Septon Barth.
Davos Seaworth might be decent. He's trying real hard, but he's still not going to beat Septon Barth. But he's trying. But Tyrion's real good. So.
And yeah, so I think that's pretty straightforward. Yeah, I think we love Barth so much it's hard to pick somebody else.
Yeah. In Barth we trust.
In Barth we do trust. We trust a lot. Okay, what's next?
That's what I'm trying to decide. I was hoping that you would joke about that for a minute. Here's a good one. Here's another funny comment for another house motto. For House Clegane, our bite is worse than our bark. Pretty funny. From Iceland. Cool
that's
name.
A good one. I like it. Yeah, Iceland. That's a good one.
Yeah. All right. Here's a good question. What POV character will have the last chapter in the last novel, A Dream of Spring? Will it even be a famous POV character, or, as I think, will it be a third-person chapter? I think
that's a really good
possible.
question.
I think that's very likely. I think it's a good question. I've thought about it before.
I don't think it'll be a third-person chapter. That much I could be wrong, obviously, but
it'll be like an epilogue because like the epilogues are different. The epilogues aren't our main characters.
Yeah, I mean that I could see it being an epilogue. Could be another. That wouldn't be third person.
No, it wouldn't be third person.
I could see it being some person like a maester or something, just writing like this is what happened. Like maybe giving like a summary. Like so he's writing down the events of the war for the Dawn.
The maester that wrote the World of Ice and Fire.
Yandel. Oh, that would be great if Maester Yandel is the last chapter. Wow, that would be really cool.
I never got to give him my book.
I'm still holding on to the World of Ice and Fire. Someone take this from me.
Yeah, that's our answer then, I suppose.
If it's one of the POV characters, though, I'm going to go with Sansa.
You know, Sansa, really?
Yeah, because I think she is going to be the least. Like she's going to have. I think she's set to have one of the happier endings.
Yeah.
I think the endings are going to. I think Bran is going to probably still be stuck in a tree.
That's why I think it's more likely to be Bran.
It could be
seeing everything that's happening.
But I think
you get the summation of all the characters.
He could be seeing it all. Yeah, that's a very good point. I just think that if he wants to have like a kind of a semi-happy ending, I know he said it's going to be bittersweet. That Sansa's a good way to show that because she's the person that started off thinking the story was like to have a happy ending. She's the one who always thinks about stories with happy endings and how the heroes always win. So she's kind of a good one to be like to reflect back on how that was not the case, although it sort of was. Anyway, so I think that's the best we can do with that one. All right, so. What is next?
Yeah, what question do we want to choose? Yeah, this one sounds fun. I lost it. Here we go. Select. Do you have a personality that you wish you could get more material from George R. R. Martin on? Or perhaps written another way, if you could receive enough material to produce an episode on one historical personality, who would it be and why?
All right. Thanks that's from Jim McGean, aka
Oh,
Something
yeah.
Like a Lawyer.
So it is.
Thanks for that one.
Very good. Very fun question. Well, I have to think about, well, some characters, there's more I would like to know about them, but we at least know something about them. Like Nymeria of the Rhoynar, we've been kind of working on an episode on her for a while, and I'd love to learn more, and there's way more we could learn, but we know a lot about her compared to other characters. For me, I'd like to know more about Alice Rivers, where she went.
Yeah, Alice
it's like
Rivers
a mystery
is a very small character, but
and Nettles
I'm curious
as well,
too.
all that. I'd also like to know, there's one, I'd like to know a lot about that Jainera Bellaris, who traveled to Sothorios on a dragon, who's the farthest to travel.
Excuse me.
I'd like to see her travels.
Yeah, I would like to know about her. Like, give me more Targaryens. Give me more Valyrians or something.
I think that's my answer. Just more Valyrian, actual. Like, we know one Valyrian house, literally one Valyrian house, other than House Targaryen, and that's Bellaris. Interesting.
I would also like to know more about Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight. That's a good one. Although I think that his personality might be a little. He might be a little. You know. He kind of might be a little not interesting because he's so straightforward. But
not mine. I just want to know the name of Doran's mother's name, the princess, the unnamed princess of Doran. Just like we know some about her. I just want to know her name. That's what I want.
Cregan Stark would be another one. That's a really good one. I want to know more about Cregan Stark.
Yeah.
This was a question that I wish I had seen in advance of the episode so I could have more time to think about it. But that's from the top of my head. Those are some good ones. I'm sure there's other ones that I haven't thought of.
Thoughts. Tell us what you think.
Oh, and Lo Longspoon. You know, the dude that eats brains, the ET guy that ate brains. No,
I want to hear about Lomas Longstrider and all of his travels. That's
yeah, Lomas Longstrider. Excellent.
Yeah,
excellent.
so you can find out the other wonders of the world. In that case, there's so many good choices. I really would like to see all of your comments on who you want to see. But let's move on to the next one. Trying to find. Okay, here we go. Our next question.
Here we have from George Fraley, our Lord Commander of our History of Westeros Night's Watch. Any tips for things to pay attention to when reading A Song of Ice and Fire a second time? Well, yeah, I have a good way to think about things when you're reading it the second time is to consider what you're getting out of what you're reading and think about whether it feels similar or not. And then if it feels familiar, maybe you need to look a little deeper. Also, a lot of it just jumps out at you because George puts something we've been saying for years. George puts the answer to riddles before he gives you the riddle itself. You're going to see a lot of that. You'll be like, oh, he told us right here before we even knew who these characters even were or what they were doing. Yeah, he does a lot of that. So I'd say there's maybe not anything specific, but if you look very much into how George describes things, he puts a lot of detail in how the characters perceive what's around them. Like the example that Mary Harrison's question earlier about the clouds and Sansa seeing the clouds. There's lots of little things like that where George is very sneaky and subtle with what he's showing you. So maybe that was kind of a vague way to answer the question, but I did want to answer that. I did want to address that because I think it's such a huge thing. It's so important to read the books again. There's just it's just so much. George intentionally wrote them to be reread. He was like, I'm going to write books that people are going to want to reread several times, and he succeeded pretty thoroughly there.
All right, let's move on to this long question.
Okay, Jeff London.
Yeah.
Where's the Iron Couch? When will George R. R. Martin publish Winds? You think the issue is a Highguard knees knot or writer's block compounded by all the pressure? Remember, Storm was out 21 months after Clash, and he wrote a ton for World of Ice and Fire, so we know he can produce. All right, a couple of different questions there.
I think one, it's just way easier for him to write World of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
He can produce, just like it's way easier for him to write about the sad puppy stuff. It's just easier. It's maybe even relaxing.
He's not dealing with like inner thoughts of a imaginary human being. It's just facts.
So it is kind of that knot type of thing. The series is a knot as a whole. I don't know that I think it's specifically related to the Highguard and Old Town, like all the Reach attack. I don't know that. But I definitely think it's just harder, and I think that he just has wanted to write more about World of Ice and Fire stuff, honestly, for a while.
Yeah.
That's what it seemed like.
And I do think that Winds is pretty likely to come out next year. I am not super optimistic about it coming out before the TV season, but I think it's a fair bet that will come out next year. I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't, but I do think there's a good chance it will. As far as where is the Iron Couch? Well, it's off camera over there.
Yeah, there's multiple iron couches.
It's actually not that comfortable. It's not great it's too low. It was too low to the ground for us to get our posters in. It just wasn't right.
Yeah, we did move it. I forgot about that.
Real quick,
we even had that.
Yeah, that's right.
I
used
didn't
to
get
call
that
it the Iron
question
Couch
until just now.
It's been a while. Yeah, we didn't use the Iron Couch this year at all. That's 2014. Real quick, shout out to Peter Blaze of the Emerald Isle, captain of the Werewood Wanderers. To long lives, quick deaths, cold beer, and warm women.
That's
a pretty good sellsword company motto there. That is a Patreon sellsword plug there. So check that out if you want to get your own sellsword company and motto. Check out History of Westeros on patreon.com. Now let's move on to the next question.
All right, I wanted to move on to this question from Suze Stewart, which was interesting.
Okay. Fandom has fun assigning and predicting many characters as Azor Ahai, the prince that was promised, etc., and I'm no exception. But do you think that all of this focus overinflates their significance to the actual narrative? Yeah, I kind of do. It kind of depends on where you're sitting, like what you've read and what you haven't.
What you've written and what you haven't?
Yeah. But then what forums you read or who you talk to or what. But I do think it's a little bit exaggerated because I don't think this is sort of touching back on the things I said before about how the story is about the characters. It's about their struggle within this fantasy world. And so these prophetic savior characters, I think they're going to end up being more human, and they're not going to be as savory as they really sound like they're going to be. They're going to be important. People are going to write about them. But these saviors that came long before, the ones that are prophesized, excuse me, the reason people talk about them like that is because over the centuries and the eons, it's like myths. They get blown out of proportion. It's like does anyone really believe the Grey King, slew a giant sea dragon by himself, or that Durin's god grief actually stood up to the gods and they didn't kill him when they tried to? These are stories that are blown out of proportion the longer they exist. It's like the telephone game. So I think that the importance of these saviors is sort of along the same lines. They're going to be important, but they're not these world-beating figures, and the story is going to be about groups of people and group efforts, humanity versus the others, perhaps, rather than these individual heroes. Although they are important, they're just not the focus, I think. I mean, Arya is not going to be any of those characters. Arya's not Azor Ahai. She's not the prince that was promised. She's not the great stallion. But can anyone doubt Arya is really important to the story? So that's kind of where I'm coming from on that. I don't think that Jon Snow is more important than Arya, but I think Jon Snow is probably Azor Ahai.
He's differently important.
He's differently important. I mean, he's more impactful in terms of the others and that, if you call that the main storyline. But as far as the reader's experience, I don't think he's more important.
This moves on to a question similar to that from our friend Geek Furious.
Yeah, Geek Furious. Right
has a nice Star Wars podcast of his own.
Yeah.
He asks, you can read it.
Since George loves the Scouring of the Shire and has spoken so highly of it, wouldn't it make sense for his final book to not be about the great fight between large-scale opponents, but a smaller, more personal insurgency that affects the main characters? Yeah, I guess I kind of answered that sort of.
I think it's an interesting thought. I always thought A Dream of Spring would deal a lot with that large-scale battle, but it would be interesting if it was more focused on the aftermath than I'm thinking.
I think it will be a bit of both. I think we're going to see the large scale. We'll also see the human conflicts.
But I'm thinking it'll be more even, and it'd be interesting if it was really just more about the aftermath sort of stuff. Kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's interesting to think about that title, Dream of Spring, is that they're dreaming like, when will we have spring again? Or is it like, spring has come? I don't know which we'll get.
Yeah.
Maybe I think by the actual end of the story, they won't be sitting around in snowdrifts 10 feet deep. But
yeah, you got to think. All right, next question. I'm just going to go down to the top ones.
Okay.
Do you believe Sam will ever return to the Wall? I hope so.
Yeah, I think so.
You
Well,
think so?
maybe not.
I think it's possible he gets his information to the wall some other way.
Yeah, and I think that maybe the wall isn't going to be either. It may not be there by the time he gets back to it.
Reunited with John, or maybe not with John, but like with some sort of, you know, not quite John, but or other Night's Watchmen, but not at the wall. If they've all been pushed to south, you know, I could see him. I don't think he's gonna die in Old Town. That's one thing. I don't think so, but I would be very brokenhearted. That would be. I don't want Sam to die. But so yeah, we're not entirely sure.
If there's a wall for him to return to, I think he'll go there. But if there isn't, then then he can't.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point. If it's there, this is a good one. It's just a comment. Since you love Dan Carlin, I should say that a parody of Dan's podcast was released called Hardcore Game of Thrones, telling the story of Westerosi history, imitating Dan's style. It's fantastic.
I have not heard of this.
I'll say I did see this, and I kept forgetting to mention it to Aziz. I saw it somewhere on Reddit.
I have not.
I haven't listened to it. I saw people commenting saying that he does his style so well that they almost forgot that it wasn't him.
Cool.
It's like he imitates his voice, and I
must check this out then. Yes.
So he'll check it out. And
thank you for that.
That was from Kieran. All right.
What?
Here we go. Let's ask this one from Geek Furious. This is related to what we were saying about Nettles before.
How important do you think the story of Nettles is to future books?
I don't know if it's important to the future books.
Nettles really threw a monkey wrench in the whole idea of what it takes to ride a dragon. Yeah. She really caused a lot of, I don't want to say controversy, that's way too strong of a word, but a lot of debate. Yeah. A lot of people use her as evidence that you don't need to have dragon blood to ride a dragon. And I think there's some merit to that idea, although comments from George, which I can't really get into right now because I don't have them in front of me to refer to, really strongly indicate you do need the right blood. That means, and there's no reason to think Nettles doesn't have Targaryen blood. It's just no reason to assume she did either. There's just some people say because she's dark skinned, she's not Targaryen. It's like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that is definitely a ridiculous. That is
ridiculous. Brown Bed Plum is brown, and he has Targaryen blood. Okay, so that we can throw that out right there.
Olive Egg's relatives.
Yeah. Right. Aegon the Fourth's kids with the Black Pearl.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's true as well.
So I think this all it takes is just like it says. Some Targaryen princeling went down to the docks, found himself a Summer Islander woman, and there you go. You know, use your imagination. So, but as far as how important she is to the story, I don't know that she's important to the story, but I think her example is important, and it's. I think George intentionally did that to maybe throw us off the scent a little bit, to maybe make a debatable.
Show that sometimes there's not concrete answers.
Yeah, but he loves to do that. He loves to do that. He loves to be like, nope, you don't know for sure.
Yeah. This next question, maybe was asked in the Q&A. The question is not coming from the Q&A though. It's who is the Harpy from David Franklin.
David Franklin, right? Okay, a strong case is made by Myronese Blott's Adam Feldman for Skahaz,
which we hadn't read actually when we did our
Slavers Bay episode, which was more than 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Now, I think it's a strong argument, but I'm not convinced that killing Dany is in Skahaz's best interest. No matter any way you slice it, he is anti-establishment, and the establishment is still very powerful. So without Dany keeping the establishment in check, that's a big problem. So he's got to keep her alliance is really important.
I am not sure. Oh, okay. Sorry.
So I think even though their goals aren't completely aligned, there's still a lot that they need to do together that he needs her for, even if it's not exactly what he wants her to do. And I think there's a problem with the theory in general. I just don't think there is a Harpy. Why would there be one leader Harpy? That doesn't make sense to me, because the Myronese, the leaders of this insurgency, the resistance movement against Dany, is made up of the great masters of Meereen and their family and their hirelings, and it's their power that's making this happen. They didn't have a king. They didn't have one ruler. So why would their shadow organization have one ruler? I think the Harpy is just a term that they throw on it because it's simple. But I don't think there's just one leader. There's several. and they probably argue about what to do, just like they did when they were in charge in the open. So anyway, so that's how I feel about that. I think the Green Grace, Resnack, they're all possibly involved, but I don't think any one of them is the de facto leader, is calling the shots. Certainly don't think it's Hizdar, although he might be more aware of things than he was being told from Barristan. So it's a developing situation, but yeah, I don't think that there's one harpy. So I think that that's a fundamental difference in how I see the problem in the first place. All right.
All right. I'm just going to answer the question so that people don't ask more show questions. And of course, I lost it as soon as I was trying to. Here it is. Here. We're not going to go into any spoilers about this. It's just, have you guys been all over the Watchers on the Wall spoilers for the next season? If so, what's got you the most excited? We have been. Things have us excited. We're not going to talk about them because we're trying to keep to A Song of Ice and Fire. If we haven't answered your, TV show question, that's why.
And I will say also that I'm glad that you picked this question in particular, because I want to say that Watchers on the Wall is great.
Yes.
And we're happy. We're thankful to them for promoting us a little bit as well. So we're happy to return the favor. Yes, I can say something that's not spoilery about next season I'm excited about. And that's some of these great new actors that they've cast. So I won't name them by name, but a lot of them, like some big names, and I'm very excited about that. That's just because that's one thing the show has really done consistently well is casting. Whether even if the guys don't look right or whatever, the people always act. The acting is always top notch. So.
And that was from Felicia Ahmad. I don't know if I said her name. I keep forgetting to say names. That one's done. Let's move on back to the books. From Joey Coletti, who is one character you wish was still alive and one character you wish was dead? I love you guys, and I watch you every day. Keep up the good work. Very nice comment.
Thank you. Any
answers from you, Aziz, on that?
One character I wish was dead. That one's harder. One character I wish was still alive. Yeah.
It's hard because it would change so much of the narrative of the story. A lot of characters, like you say Ned or you say Rob or anything like that. Not that they would be my answers necessarily, but it changes a lot.
I'd say Maester Luwin. That's one that wouldn't change the story a lot that I'd really like to see, because I kind of want him to see what happened with the Stark kids. I want to see them. He wants to, have him learn. And he at least got the mercy of learning that Rickon and Bran were still alive.
Yeah,
which was great. And that would be a reason to wish that Catelyn was alive, so she could learn that her kids were still alive too. Although maybe Lady Stoneheart will learn that, so that will be sort of taken care of.
Characters I wish were dead.
That's a tough question.
Boltons. I want Ramsay
stumped
dead.
with that one, actually.
I want Ramsay dead. That's why I want dead.
Yeah, Ramsay needs to die, definitely.
People I want alive. I want Maester Aemon alive. That's who I want alive.
Yeah, bring back.
I want him to meet Daenerys very much. But that's my answer, at least. Maybe we'll think of someone later. Move on to another one. Some of these are really good. Like, there's a question: if we were to write one sentence summaries per book, what would you write? That one, for instance, if we'd seen it before we did the episode live, we could have come up with it, but live we just don't have the time to vote for that. So sorry if we're not answering your question, but submit it in advance next time and we'll have our answers ready.
Right on.
Here's another question about Sam. He's a popular topic. This one's got 15 upvotes.
How will Sam relay any useful knowledge he learns in the Citadel to Jon or anyone who can use it in the upcoming war against the others? You can't just trust that to a raven carrying a scroll, can you?
Ron Snow.
Which is a wonderfully...
I'd say maybe you can just trust it to a raven carrying a scroll if it's just a bunch of ravens, but maybe he sends someone else. Maybe Sam does go back to the wall.
Maybe you send the raven and say, hey, Bran, keep an eye on this raven for us. Make sure it gets there. Take over this raven and fly it down there. Yeah, I think they just would want to make sure by sending multiple ravens.
Yeah, they just send a bunch. Like, if it's useful to saving them, it's not really going to harm you if other people get that raven.
Yeah.
Felt like it's secrets to take down the wall, probably.
Very true.
That's my thought. You just send out a bunch. All right. That one is answered sufficiently, I suppose. Let's go on to... we've answered a bunch from him. I'll go back to him. I'm going to other upvoted ones. Here we go. Here's a good one. from Wiz the Smith with 8 upvotes.
How do you see Jaime, Brienne, and Lady Stoneheart cliffhanger playing out? That's a great question. I've thought about this one a lot. This is why I suggested that Brienne might be on the chopping block, because I don't think they can both get out of this alive. I feel like one of them is going to die. I'm also worried for Podrick Payne for that very reason. And I think that what might happen is that Jaime is going to be forced to fight. He will say that he's innocent of what he's been charged of, and they'll let him fight, give him a trial by combat, maybe in a mocking way, because they know that he's not capable of fighting because of his hand. And Brienne will stand for him. Brienne will say, hey, I'm going to be a champ, because she knows he's telling the truth. She knows he's reformed. She knows better than anybody, except maybe Jaime himself, that he is honest now. Catelyn will never believe it. But she may be given pause by Brienne just saying that she'll defend him. I know this is very specific. So this is a very specific theory I have about how this is going to go down. But yeah, I'm worried about Brienne getting out of that, because out of the two of them, I feel like Jaime's arc is the one that has more long term to it.
Yeah, if we think he's the Valakar, which we do.
He has to deal with Cersei still. He has to maybe have a reuniting with Tyrion at some point. And I think that his redemption arc is incomplete to this point. I think he hasn't gone far enough along the lines. And personally, I never could tell. I like Brienne a lot, but I could never tell what is going to happen, where she's headed, what her deal is going to be, whether she's going to rescue a Stark or two, or whether she's ever going to get to come face to face with Stannis. It's really hard to say. Yeah. So, but I do think that of the two, Jaime is a little more likely to get out of that alive. And I do think that that is likely to happen, that Jaime's going to escape, maybe be let go because he wins his freedom, but it might cost Brienne. It may even be that they're pitted against each other, in which case Brienne might just let Jaime win because she thinks that he's, it's the right thing to do or something. But that's a bit more far-fetched.
All right, next question.
Yeah.
Here's a good question. Anthony Hargan Jr. Do you think Cersei can do anything to stop the Maggie the Frog prophecy from happening? Well, I guess if she killed herself, it wouldn't be correct anymore.
I don't think she can do anything.
I don't think so, though.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen. I don't think she can do anything about it. I think she might, her efforts to make it not happen might make it happen sooner, or might be what makes it happen in the first place, which is a lot of times how these plot lines tend to go. When someone is told the future, they end up making it happen themselves.
All right. Next question. Another question from Cash Craig. It's just a comment, so it's quick. Sam can send info to the wall using a glass candle, Quake style. I like that idea. That's
if Sam learned how to use a little glass candle, that would be pretty sweet.
That'd be pretty cool. That, good comment. Let's find some other well upvoted. Here's a good one from George Fraley.
Do we know what Bloodraven's relationship with the old gods was prior to his disappearing beyond the wall?
We can suspect, but he had some relationship personally.
I believe he did because of his Blackwood roots. Although I don't think he was seeing through werewoods back when he was like Hand of the King and stuff. I don't think he had his awakening. I think his awakening, like Bran's, probably happened beyond the wall.
Do you think he was skin changing, seeing into things? Do you think he?
Yes, I do think he was doing that.
He was having dreams like through ravens or something like that. Yes. And telling him information.
I think he was, and I think he was very open to the idea because he was definitely delving in other forms of magic. So he's certainly like open-minded about it and would have the more resources perhaps than Bran. So say, look at some old books. Yeah. Do some stuff. He's the Hand of the King. He would have access to, the Citadel and whatever libraries they have at King's Landing, a library on Dragonstone, which there's got to have maybe some ancient Valyrian stuff. So yeah, I think that's one of the things that makes Bloodraven particularly interesting is his mixed magic background. Yeah. But I do think his relationship with the old gods was there, but smallish prior to going to the wall. I think that's when it awakened. I think when he got around living werewoods and maybe started to explore it a little more. Yeah. And I think maybe when he disappeared, it was because he had, he maybe discovered. Maybe the cave that he's in now is what he discovered, and he ran into some old green seer that, it's like passing the torch, green seer to green seer, and whoever came before Bloodraven, now Bloodraven's passing the torch to Bran. It might be something like that.
All right, we're going to move on to the next question. We have about 20 minutes left. We're going to do another Q&A question, move to some that were submitted separately, but this next question is real short. Really love the show, guys. Just one question on the book to show. Will you be watching the new season if TWOW is not yet released? Thanks, from Andrew Manford. Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna. I won't be thrilled about it, but we need to. We do this, as we said. We're trying to do this professionally as much as possible, or at least to make a partial or somewhat partial living from it. And that means we got to cover the show. That's there's so much attention paid to the show at the time when it happens. The fandom, comes out of the woodwork a bit more. There's a lot more people interested. General interest is higher. So yeah, we're going to cover it.
It to our viewers right here.
Yeah, that's true. More Q&A viewers during the TV season than this one.
But
that is how it is. Yes. Oh yeah, let's get that one.
All right. Next one is another short comment. It's from AU Pack Mule.
Shout out to the freaking Italian. Yes, unfortunately, some of you may have heard already, Steve Mangiamelli passed on October 15th. And we dedicated the Redgrass Field episode, which you haven't seen yet, because, well, some of you may have if you're watching this not live.
Yeah.
But we recorded that last night. The episode's dedicated to him. We started the episode with the dedication, so you'll hear more about it then. But, yeah, we'll miss you, Steve, and thanks for starting this show for us, because there would be no History of Westeros podcast without Steve.
To people that were maybe wondering where Steve went a while ago, this is related to that. He had health problems, and that is why he dropped out. We never wanted to talk too much about it in the episodes at his request.
But now it's time to, tell the whole story.
So you'll see if you watch the Redgrass Field episode, you'll hear a little bit more about that.
Yes. That will be published next week.
Yes. There's definitely a lot of nice comments here. I'm not going to necessarily select them all to feature them, but we will read all of the questions and the comments. Let's get this one. Oops. Here's the next good question.
From our buddy Don the Kraken Wit, who has his own YouTube channel. Check him out. He does good stuff over there and has some nice long discussions, some chapter breakdowns, and other fun stuff. And lives nearby. We met up recently. Good time. Small world. You never know who lives near you when you do everything on the internet.
We're in the Atlanta area.
Yeah, that's right.
By the way.
Yes, just in case you're nearby too. So the question is, how do you feel about Victarion being flesh made fire instead of fire made flesh? That's a good way to put the question too. And I know that Don's favorite character is Victarion, so I'm not surprised that we have a Victarion-centered question here.
He's in his Greyjoy shirt.
That's right. I got a Greyjoy shirt on right now. Castle Greyjoy, watch out. So I think it's really interesting, really cool. It's definitely the beginning of some of these magic things that are starting to be more present in the series, which I never want the magic to get too out of hand, but I like these creepy, mysterious, not sure how it's going to work. You have to sacrifice to make it work properly. There's a high cost to the magic, that kind of thing. So I think that what we're dealing with specifically is something that is bad for Victarion. I don't think that Victarion is going to come out of this great. I think that Makoro is kind of manipulating him. I don't think there's any chance Makoro is anything but loyal to Dany, because their religion, his head priest, the guy that sent him there, the guy that sent Makoro out there, is openly preaching that Daenerys is Azor Ahai, that she is the one, she is the the chosen one, or whatever you want to call it, whatever favorite term you have. So Makoro is not helping Victarion; he's helping Daenerys, and he's doing it by manipulating Victarion. So as far as actually being made fireless, I can't wait to see him in action. I think he's going to be unstoppable for a little while until something stops him. I don't know. It probably won't just be one guy. But I predicted that he fights Bloodbeard or someone else that's notable like that. Maybe Barristan even. But he's going to arrive kind of as a sort of an ally to Dany. Not really, but sort of. Like, he wants to fight Dany's enemies, but he also wants to kidnap her and steal her dragons. So that's kind of a little column A, a little from column B.
All right, so let's move on to a few more comments and questions here. This is just a nice response from Jim McGeehan.
Oh yeah, he's answering his own question about one-day hands.
Yes, and
it
gave me a thought too. Corlys Velaryon.
Ooh,
that's what I want to see. He's been all over the world.
Yeah, you can at least be able to ask him lots of cool questions.
Yeah,
like, tell us about the Thousand Islands. And
he was talking about. Of course, he was talking about the hands, huh?
Yeah.
I was thinking about the historical characters you'd like to read more about, and my answer to that was Corlys Velaryon.
Well, Corlys was sort of like that was hand for Rhaenyra.
Yeah, yeah.
Rhaenyra, so it still
True,
works.
it still works. But I was specifically thinking about George writing more material.
Oh yeah, okay. Cool.
But to read it out loud for those of you on iTunes, Jim's comment was, if I had to pick Cregan Stark, the one-day hand, Tywin Lannister, the maimed hand, and Oakenfist's thrilling naval battles against Dalton Greyjoy, the Red Kraken. Really good answers.
Yeah, I would love to see Oakenfist's everything about Oakenfist's as much as his probable father Corlys Velaryon. Speaking of the sea snake.
Okay, here we go. Here's another good question. I'd never actually considered it. Do you think they will have to melt down the Iron Throne to fight the White Walkers? From Anthony Hargan Jr.
Well, you mean that so weapons will become so scarce that they will need new sources of iron?
I had the thought of them just melting it down and it's like molten and they just dump it.
Throw it at them.
But no, I never considered that, and I think that's actually a really good idea.
Yeah, it's possible. I wonder if things get that bad. I do expect things to get really, really bad. Really bad. Like the North, I think the North will be overrun. It'll be inhospitable potentially. Yeah. So, and I do think that maybe the conflict will happen around the Trident because of one of Dany's visions shows her melting an army of ice at the Trident. Although the Trident is still north of King's Landing, so maybe they won't get quite that far. But we've also seen foreshadowing for maybe like snow on King's Landing, things like that. Yeah, humanity could get to the point where they're that desperate. Yeah. That would be interesting.
Definitely a cool idea.
Very cool idea.
I hadn't thought of myself. Another nice, easy question, fun question is, where in the world of Ice and Fire would you like to live? Making love is religion? Summer Islands, all the way. And that's from Craigie Casablanca. And I've thought about this before. As a woman, my answers are, not as easy as Aziz's answers, I'd say. So obviously, Dorne would be cool, except the weather isn't exactly my thing. Old Town would be cool if you're a Hightower, because as a woman, you could probably still get the books and get into the Citadel. Summer Islands would be cool, but also I like the idea of living in the Cimmeriana, like Kayakana, which are ruled by women. So that's my thought: is where am I not going to be abused and made to marry someone? Aziz, though, you have way more choices.
I like the Summer Islands. A good choice. If I was a native of Nath, I could live there, but I don't get to choose to live there. You don't get any books. I get to read the talking trees. I get to live. Yeah, I could live in Old Town. I suppose it's pretty safe on the inside. I would not want to live in Ashai. I might want to see it, but I might rather just see like a live stream of Ashai.
ET would probably be pretty cool, honestly. They have a lot of.
It might be cool. Yeah, it sounds like it might be more developed. So it might be more civilized, potentially. Maybe not. I would not want to live in Sithorios.
No.
I would not want to live in North. No thanks, cold. No thank you at all.
Iron Islands for me.
Bravos wouldn't be too bad, although it's cold
Bravos
there.
Wouldn't be too bad. That's true. Even for me.
No way, Norvos. No way, Ib.
If I was in Norvos, I'd have a shaved head and like wigs. And
no, that's Lorath, right?
No, Norvos.
Oh, no, you're right. Norvos, they do women to shave. Yeah, you're right.
The beard, they
totally
have that
right.
weird hair hang up.
Oh, the women wear wigs when they're around people from other cultures. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
bizarre.
Definitely. Some interesting world building tidbits from World of Ice and Fire.
Right.
Yeah, pretty fun question. Let's see. Our next top question. Kieran.
Here we go. He's dominating the questions. He got a lot of good upvotes on this one too. You think Bran is being led astray by Bloodraven, unbeknownst to him, of course. What do you think his purpose is? What possible role would Mira play? Kind of writing Jojen off at this point, he says. I kind of agree, Jojen. I don't think Jojen has a big role to play anymore. He keeps saying today's not the day I die. Well, eventually it is going to be the day he dies. And he himself has said his point. He served his purpose. He himself says that, and he's pretty much right about everything he says. So I agree to write off Jojen, although it's sad to say that. His purpose, though, I don't think that Bloodraven is leading him astray. I think that he really is preparing him for something important that is good for humankind. But I don't think he's telling him the whole story. I don't think Bran knows just how deep into it he's going to have to get. I don't think he realizes the sacrifices he's going to have to make, the things he's going to have to do, and maybe he doesn't realize just how some of these magical powers that need to be used, that the cost that needs to be paid to make them work, the price that needs to be paid. I mean, there's all these old stories of of blood sacrifice to the werewoods and the children of the forest, maybe being a lot darker than they seem. There being, like a lot of times you see these things with nature worshiping cultures or nature cults where they really have a view of death that is quite different than standard human society. They think death is just part of the cycle of nature. It's you go back into the earth, you become part of it, and nature continues. You're part of that natural ebb and flow of life.
Thought if the old gods just want more people in the earth to die and be part of their werewood network.
Yikes.
That's why the others are. It's just very creepy.
So I don't think Bloodraven is fooling Bran fully, like he's completely tricking him. But I do think there's a lot more to the story that Bran wouldn't want to know. And I think Bloodraven's got to break him in gradually. So like, it's like, you made it to the next level. Now I got to tell you this dark secret, unfortunately, that this is necessary. We have to kill this thing to do this. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be dark, but I don't think he's, fully manipulating.
Yeah. Next question. This is our next highest question right now.
It's Sweet YFT.
Who we for a long time thought was Sweetie FT, and we finally have gotten it correct.
Let's talk faceless men. How could Jaqen become the alchemist in the middle of the road? If it's just glamour, why do they need the Hall of Faces in the House of Black and White? If all men must die, why do they sell their talents to the highest bidder? Okay.
All good questions.
All very good questions. Okay, let's answer them one at a time. Let's start with the first one. How could Jaqen become the alchemist in the middle of the road? Well, that's a good question. I think there is some sorcery involved. I think there is some magic involved. And I think the way it works is that the faces are for, and I think this is sort of alluded to by the Kindly Man, is that the way they wear the faces because they haven't learned how to do the sorcery. That's for the younger folk, the newbies, sort of. And it could also perhaps allow them to make a greater disguise than possible. Like Jaqen's face changes quite a bit, but it's not like he
is now a short little woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might need the faces for like really substantial disguises, but if you're just going from one dude to another of similar height with just different hair color,
like the anchor for the glamour.
Yeah.
Face, anchors it.
Yeah, that's a good topic for another time. The anchors for the glamours. Notice Lightbringer has a ruby. Melisandre has a ruby.
Yeah.
Rubies.
Yeah. Mance has his, whatever.
Yeah, Mance had the bracelet ruby, which I don't. He doesn't have it anymore at Winterfell, though.
Yeah.
I think. Okay. So, and then why do they? So we explained the first two questions. If all men must die, why do they sell their talents to the highest bidder? I'm not sure that's exactly how they do it. It's not like a contract where they say, okay, who's going to pay the most for me, and then whoever pays the most is the one that gets that killer. It's just that they charge people absurd amounts for their services,
and they sometimes just say no. Yeah,
sometimes they say no, and it's relative. It's like if a beggar says, "I want you to kill this person," they'll accept the deal. But you have to give that the beggar's 2/3 of the beggar's wealth is a lot less. And sometimes they'll ask for the life of somebody. The father gave, there's cases where the father will give his own life to get a deal done. Someone will give their own life up in order to have the faceless men kill somebody. But it still raises an interesting question. This is a priesthood. We can't assume that they're all just down the center following the church teachings the way they're supposed to. There could absolutely be some corruption in there. I mean, they do seem to be very cult-like. They're very strict on a lot of things. So it's maybe less likely to happen, but still, corruption happens. These are still human beings. They can be tempted. They can have life-altering. They can have life-altering experiences that change what they want out of life. Like, why the hell am I doing this? I'm going around killing people. I can't do this anymore. So let's take one more question, and then we'll do our closing credits.
We'll do this one right here. Well, we have to do one more because we have one that.
Oh yes, one more, then we'll do that one. Then we'll do that.
Okay. Right here. What kind of game is Alaris / Sorella playing in the Citadel? Is it related to her father and a desire for revenge, or since she joined the Citadel before his death, is it something else? I think she took inspiration from her father doing the same thing and had an interest. Maybe she likes learning, or. I think she realized she could pass as a man. She thought it would be fun to try to pretend to be a man, and that's the game, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure that there's a whole lot more to it. She knows she can't get accepted as a woman, and all the sand snakes are kind of like little distilled versions of their father. They're like, each one is like the crystal. Like you look at a different angle, and you get the different reflection of that prism. They're all little, like they all have little
facets of the
of the Red Viper, and certainly the Red Viper went to the Citadel and got 6 chains, forged 6 links.
Question
Poison being one of them.
Will she complete her chains, or will she stop at 6?
Will she do the same thing? Yeah. I think that's not unlikely. I wonder if we'll get to that point. Although, of course, if the Ironborn attack, no one's going to be studying if there's Ironborn and running through the streets.
Definitely, Sorella's a good person for Sam to have near him, perhaps. When they're attacking, she's probably a decent fighter.
Yeah, she could at least shoot her. She could shoot down some Ironborn.
Yeah. So that was a good question, fun question. That's the last of the Q&A questions, except for this one was asked. I'm not sure where it was asked, Aziz.
I don't recall.
Anyway,
I think it might have been in our Facebook page.
From Amy Burns.
Arthur Dayne, is Arthur Dayne still alive to keep an eye on Jon? This is a way to address several different is Arthur Dayne alive theories. I myself, back in 2004, maybe, posted. It was one of the first things I posted on the Westeros.org forums was a potential Arthur Dayne is alive theory, and my reasoning was because Arthur Dayne is a borrowed character from another series, and that character turned out to be alive. It was the same circumstances where he was thought to be. He was the best knight, fought with a sword, forged from a fallen star, was considered the most honorable and the best fighter, and then instead of being thought to be dead, he disappeared and was presumed dead, but he turned out to be alive. Similar circumstances. So, but I don't think that's true, though. Yeah. I think the other things are similar about Arthur, but the plot points aren't similar. It's he took the window dressing and made that the same, but the characters, other than that, aren't that similar. I do not think Arthur Dayne is alive. I don't think Ned would bother making an 8th cairn for him if he was going to do that. I don't think that would be a necessary deception. People aren't going to be like, I'm going to go to the Tower of Joy, make sure there's 8 cairns there, or make sure that all the bodies are there. The Tower of Joy is out of the way. It's remote. People didn't know where it was necessarily. I don't think that's a problem. So what we're left with is that he's just not alive. I don't see the point. First of all, if he's Mance, which is one popular theory, this doesn't work for me. Mance was at Winterfell at the beginning of the story. Jaime knows what Arthur Dayne looks like. He idolized him. Ned knows what Arthur Dayne looks like. He also looked up to him, not as much as Jaime did. There's too many people that would have recognized him. So, yeah. Plus, their personalities are very different. Arthur Dayne is a disciplinarian, loyal to a fault. Mance had to leave the Night's Watch because he wanted to wear a cloak with red. I mean, obviously that was a metaphor, but still, he doesn't run the wildlings like the way John Connington thinks about Arthur Dayne running a company. How at one point John Connington sees how the Golden Company has laid out their camp, and he's like, Arthur Dayne would be proud of how disciplined and tight this is. Mance Rayder doesn't do anything like that. Yeah.
So in summary, no.
Yeah,
we don't tend to think that.
It would be kind of cool, but I just don't see it. Yeah.
Now we have to move on to our credits. We're coming real close.
Yes, thank you to our Patreon supporters who helped make this possible. Thank you to First Lord Cash Craig, and for the questions, Hand of the King, and Captain of Mario Making.
Oh, that's cool. It makes me want to get Mario Maker even more.
Lord Jim the Fortuitous of Wars and Politics of Ice and Fire blog and Warden of the West. You'll see him on our Red Grass Field episode, which we're very happy with. We can't wait to finish editing that and get that out to you. Of course, some of you, by the time you hear this, you will have already seen it. Lord George Stormsville the Cunning, Lord of the Chiliad and Warden of the East. Lord John Reed of Castle Woodbridge, the Lord Borealis, the Light of the North and Warden of the North. Frontier Lord James Knox of the Poker Fort, Hammer of the Dornish Session and Warden of the South. Lord James Inkblade, the Scholar Knight, Master of Whisperers. Grand Maester Itai wears the jeweled crown of... jeweled crown? I've done that like 3 times. Jeweled collar of many metals. Lord Robert Jacobs, Master of Coin. Rosie the Clever is our Master of Laws. Lord James Tuttle is our Master of Ships. Lady Direliz of Castle Naki is the Alpha Patron. Lord Dan of the Red Mountains and Castle Great Bell is the Breaker of the Second Stone. High Chief Drew of the Frostfangs is Lord of the Claymore. Lord Skip of the Veldt is Lord of Castle Ganges. Kebeth the Unfrozen is Lord of the Bricks and Castle Crimson Light. Lord Aceris of Dragonmont is the Serpent in the Narrow Sea. Lord Damian Sand, the Resilient, wielder of the Valyrian Steel Spear, Swan Song. Gregor the Toasty is Lord of the Bread Fort. And Alicia Everlasting of the Green Blood is Lady of the Desert Rose.
Nice.
If you would like to have your own cool title, go to historyofwesteros.com and click on the Patreon link in the upper right, or go straight to patreon.com and search for History of Westeros. And also wanted to thank our first sword, or I'm sorry, not our first sword, our King's Justice, Sir Troy the Steady, wielder of the Valyrian Steel Blade Fate, and Lord Commander George the Golden, our History of Westeros Night's Watch Lord Commander, as well as Lord Commander Shepard, our History of Westeros Kingsguard Lord Commander. Thanks to everyone, and thanks to the rest of our Patreon supporters. You all matter very much, and we appreciate your support so much, and we appreciate everyone else as well who spreads the word about the show, who supports us, who asks us questions, who upvotes, who participates, and just generally thank you for being part of the Song of Ice and Fire community. our first live Q&A.
Yeah,
Thanks for running the show, Shea.
MVP
here.
Yeah, I know. So I'm so sorry if I didn't get to your question. Next time, if you want me to get to your question, just, compliment me. Like, Shea, I love you so much. Just answer my question. I'll get to your question then, I swear.
But no, there were a lot of great questions we couldn't get to, but
I'm
that's just the way it goes.
It's crazy how long it is. I'm so sorry that we can't get to them all. But
you do stand a better chance if you ask the question in advance. A lot of these were asked today.
If you ask it in advance, we almost guarantee we'll answer it. We put it in a document and
we'll think about it ahead
of
time. Some of these we answered on the fly. Some of them we prepared answers for. So the sooner you ask us, the sooner.
And please remember, if you like this map, please email us about it. If you want to talk more about it, I'm really excited. Especially so you can see it in its full high definition. It's really, really amazing map.
All right, thanks everybody. And we'll see you next time. Again, we'll have another Q&A episode in the coming weeks/month, and we'll let you know as soon as that happens. Valar Morghulis.